In a time when chains weighed heavier than dreams, when freedom was but a whisper carried by the wind, there lived a man named Kwame. Born into captivity, his back bore the scars of his oppressors, but his mind was sharper than any blade. This is the story of how one slave defied fate, outwitted his masters, and became a legend for generations to come. The sun rises over the kingdom of Ocean, a vast land ruled by iron and gold. The palace of Lord Balagan looms over the villages like a god watching over mortals. And in the fields, men and women toil under the unrelenting sun, their sweat mixing with the soil that would never belong to them. The heat is oppressive, the air thick with dust, the cries of the overseers ringing through the air like thunder. Among them, Kwame, a man with chains on his wrists but rebellion in his heart. He was not like the others. He listened. He watched. And he waited for his moment. He had learned long ago that silence was a weapon sharper than steel, and patience was the key to freedom. Kwame was known among the slaves not for his strength, but for his mind. He never spoke out of turn, never resisted when the whip struck him, but behind his calm eyes, a plan was forming. He knew every path through the village, every weakness of the guards, every secret passage that the masters thought hidden. He had studied their movements, memorized their habits, learned their greed and arrogance. One evening, as the overseers feasted on roasted meats and drank fermented palm wine, he sat beside an old man named Tond, a former warrior whose spirit had not been broken despite years of enslavement. Their conversation was quiet, but their words held power. Freedom is a bird that cannot be caged, Kwame. But you must be patient, like the spider weaving its web. The masters grow fat and blind with greed. That is when the hunter strikes. Then we must wait for the right moment. And when it comes, we will not hesitate. And so, Kwame was patient. He observed. He learned. He waited. He memorized every routine, every weakness in their watch, every moment when the masters grew complacent in their assumed superiority. He spoke little, but thought much. And with every passing day, his plan took shape. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Kwame knew that knowledge was power, and so he listened carefully to everything the master said. He memorized the times when the guards changed shifts, which slaves were allowed inside the master's house, and which paths led to hidden places where secrets were whispered. Every detail, no matter how small, became a piece of the puzzle he was slowly assembling. But patience was not without pain. Every time the whip cracked against his back, every time he saw another slave fall from exhaustion, he had to bite down his rage. He could not act yet. Not until everything was perfect. Opportunity came when Lord Balagan announced a grand feast, inviting neighboring rulers and traders to witness his worth. The palace was a fortress, but feast made men careless. The guards would be distracted, the kitchens would be chaotic, and for the first time in years, the gates would be left slightly open. Kwame knew this was his chance. But he did not wish to run alone. He had spent years whispering hope into the hearts of his fellow slaves, planting the seeds of rebellion. And now, they were ready. The night before the feast, he crept through the shadows, gathering his allies. With stolen tools and hidden strength, they prepared to break their chains. Each member had a role, each movement rehearsed in the secrecy of night. Tomorrow night, we do not run, we take back our lives. We move as one. No hesitation. There was no fear in their eyes. Only hunger for the life that had been stolen from them. And so, they made their silent vows beneath the stars, knowing that tomorrow would either bring freedom or death. As the night deepened, Kwame lay awake, staring at the sky. He knew what they were about to do was dangerous. If they failed, there would be no mercy. But he also knew that if they did nothing, they would die slaves. The choice was clear. The night was dark, but the moon cast just enough light to guide Kwame and his people through the fields. They moved swiftly, their steps barely making a sound. Every breath was measured, every motion rehearsed 100 times in their minds. But the escape would not be so easy. A single misstep, a single sound, and they would be caught. And then the price of failure would be more than just another beating, it would be their lives. The palace guards were known to be ruthless. They did not simply capture escaped slaves, they made examples of them. Kwame knew this, and so did everyone who followed him. Yet, despite the fear in their hearts, no one hesitated. They had prepared for this moment for too long. They moved as shadows, slipping through narrow alleys and across open courtyards with the grace of the wind. The city around them was alive with the sounds of celebration, music, laughter, the clinking of golden cups. The very feast that had drawn the attention of the powerful had become their shield. And then, the first test came. A pair of guards stood near the side entrance, their only way out. Kwame gestured for his people to halt. He took a deep breath, knowing that in the next few moments, everything would depend on his ability to outthink his enemy. Kwame and his people remained hidden in the shadows, their breaths shallow, their hearts hammering in their chest. The guards near the side entrance stood rigid, their spears glinting under the torches. The air was thick with tension. One wrong move, one misplaced step, and the alarm would be raised. Kwame had anticipated this. He knew the guards would not leave their post without reason. And so, he had devised a distraction. A few meters away, in a pile of discarded food scraps, a small fire flickered to life. The flames danced hungrily, licking at the dry hay scattered around. Smoke curled into the air, thick and acrid. The guards turned toward it, their expressions shifting from boredom to alarm. "Fire! Get water, quickly!" As the guards scrambled to put out the flames, Kwame signaled his people. Silently, they moved, their bare feet making no sound on the stone floor. The entrance was just ahead. Freedom was within reach. But just as they reached the threshold, a sharp cry rang through the night. The sound of it sliced through the air like a knife. "Escape! Escape! They are running!" Kwame turned sharply, his eyes narrowing as his stomach twisted. Someone had betrayed them. One of their own. In the panic, he did not see who, but the damage was done. The guards, momentarily distracted by the fire, snapped their heads toward the escaping slaves. With a roar, they charged. Kwame did not hesitate. He grabbed the nearest torch and flung it toward the approaching soldiers. The flames burst as they struck the ground, momentarily blocking the path. "Run! Do not stop!" They dashed into the open, their legs burning as they pushed forward. The gates of the compound loomed before them, slightly ajar. It was now or never. The air was thick with fear. Kwame and his people sprinted across the open land, their eyes fixed on the dense jungle ahead. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder, footsteps pounding, shouts echoing, dogs barking. The forest was their only chance. If they could reach it, they could disappear into the darkness. But the overseers knew this land as well. They sent out riders on horseback, torches held high, searching for fleeing bodies in the night. "They are too fast, Kwame. We will never make it." "We will. Follow me." Kwame veered off the main path, leading them through a narrow ravine where the horses could not follow. Branches scratched their skin, the ground was uneven, but they did not stop. The shouts behind them grew fainter. The darkness swallowed them whole. They had escaped the compound, but they were not safe yet. The jungle was vast, but the overseers would not give up easily. Kwame knew they would need to make a stand. He led his people to a clearing near a river. The water was shallow but fast-moving. If they crossed, they would be harder to track. But first, they needed to slow their pursuers. "We cannot outrun them forever. But we can make them fear us." Using the vines and fallen logs, they set crude traps. Tripwires hidden beneath leaves, pits covered with branches, sharp stones arranged along the riverbank. It was not much, but it would buy them time. The moment the first rider appeared, the plan went into motion. A hidden tripwire sent a horse tumbling, throwing its rider into the mud. Another rider, unaware of the pitfalls, fell into a camouflaged hole. The overseers shouted in frustration, "Find them! Bring me their heads!" But by the time the overseers regrouped, Kwame and his people were already across the river, fading into the misty jungle beyond. Days turned into weeks. Kwame and his people traveled deeper into the wilderness, finding shelter in hidden valleys and caves. They built homes, planted crops, and forged weapons, knowing that one day, they might have to fight again. Word of their escape spread like wildfire. Slaves in other villages whispered his name. Kwame had not just freed himself, he had started something greater. A movement. A legend. Lord Balagan sent men to find them, but none returned. Some say they were swallowed by the jungle. Others say Kwame himself led them into traps, ensuring that no master would ever lay chains upon them again. And so, the legend of Kwame was born. The slave who outsmarted his masters. The man who turned chains into weapons, and fear into freedom. Studio microphone narrator. History remembers kings and warriors, but sometimes, the greatest stories belong to those who rise from nothing. Kwame's name was whispered in the wind, carried by the rivers, never fading from history. Tell me, if you were in his place, would you have dared to fight? To run? To dream of a world where no man is chained? History is written by the bold. And legends are made by those who refuse to bow. Subscribe for more African legends. Comment your thoughts.